Up until 5 days ago, Harvey Weinstein was arguably the most powerful man in Hollywood. He launched careers. He made billions and billions of dollars for himself and his various investors, his company, the Weinstein Company, and his brother. But then, it all came crashing down. With two articles written in the New York Times first and then the New Yorker, it exposed that Weinstein has been accused over the decades of dozens and dozens of illegal acts of offensive conduct, sexual harassment, all the way up to full-fledged rape are the allegations, and that he's paid millions of dollars to his accusers to keep it quiet over the years. Since the revelations, Weinstein has been fired from his co-chairmanship of the Weinstein Company. He's now apparently in sex rehab or going to sex rehab. All of Hollywood has expressed outrage, and hypocrisies are being exposed all over the place. We're going to dive into the allegations against Weinstein, the repercussions of the scandal, and try to answer the ultimate question, which is, will any of this affect the sort of brutal realities of gender and power and Hollywood politics? I'm Jason Beckerman.
And I'm Derek Kaufman.
And this is Behind the Bar. Derek, clarify for the listeners at home, and frankly for me as well, exactly where things stand in terms of the allegations. Who has accused him of what? How far has it gone? How solid are the allegations against him?
So, look, this is a moving target because we're in the age of Twitter where once the articles in the New York Times and the New Yorker came out, a bunch of people tweeted things, alluded to various other incidents. But let's take the really firm reporting comes from the New Yorker. It had a huge profile where Ronan Farrow, the son of Mia Farrow, did this expose where he talked to 13 different women and told their stories of sexual harassment and some of it even sexual assault and rape. Some of the allegations, there's Asia Argento, the woman who has one of the most lurid allegations. She's currently dating Anthony Bourdain. She tells a story of going to Harvey Weinstein's hotel room.
As a young, aspiring, wanted to be an actress.
As an aspiring actress, him coming out in a robe, exposing himself, and then giving her oral sex, which she feigned enjoyment because she was sort of afraid of him. They then carried on some sort of sexual relationship after that, but it's haunted her whole life. And this is really the theme that goes on throughout these allegations. There's a lot of them, and the details are different, but they all revolve around Harvey Weinstein usually inviting a young starlet up to a hotel room and either asking her for a massage, asking her to watch him bathe, masturbating in front of her, things of that nature. And some of the allegations in the Ronan Farrow piece also talk about how he used employees at his office to maybe lure in women. So he would have female employees that he used as what are termed honeypots to sort of make a woman feel comfortable with the meeting, saying, hey, this woman will also be there, then excusing that employee from the room and having the one-on-one interaction with the starlet. So all of these allegations came out. It obviously devastated his career very, very quickly.
Going back to the allegations, I mean, it seems to be that what we have is there's a thread of this power dynamic there. I mean, a lot of it you can assign sort of offhand to fetishism, but it really is an assertion of his authority over these people, that he can get them to do, these young and beautiful women, get them to do anything he wants, no matter how sort of deviant or disgusting it might be.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think, what was the audio tape that was released about his conversation? Do you remember the name of the actress that was in the audio tape?
Her name was, Ambra Gutierrez.
So her name was Amber Gutierrez. You have the audio that comes out where she's objecting to the fact that he has groped her breast, and he says, I'm used to this. I'm used to that. Meaning, yes. I'm just used to grabbing women's breasts. And she goes, well, I'm not used to that. And he was so sort of seemingly stunned by the fact this woman would object to him. You know, he is, again, one of the most powerful people in Hollywood. He's a queen maker. He has made the careers of dozens of people that are now household names. And he's accustomed to the fact that women who come to his office will want that so badly that they will put up with anything, including grabbing his breast. And he enjoyed that power. He could get women to watch this disgusting,
spectacle
of himself masturbating or standing and showering, which was his thing, right? To get women to watch him. It's just incredible psychology of power that he has.
It really is. And because, you could say, if you're reading some of the allegations, it sounds like someone who's maybe tone deaf a little bit and doesn't understand women. But some of the quid pro quo interactions are really, really explicit, and they expose this power dynamic where he would invite the starlets in and mention movie roles that he could potentially have them in, maybe sort of insult them a little bit in a flirtatious manner. One woman he invited in and said, hey, you could be on Project Runway if you lost a little weight, but I have these other roles for you. Sort of that whole interplay.
Although that is so common within Hollywood, it almost doesn't even bear repeat. I mean, it's not just in a male-female relationship. You hear that sort of that dynamic, and women saying that same thing to women, right?
That's right, but it shows sort of the exploitation of the power that he knew he had in all of these interactions, even though he's, by all accounts, sort of objectively grotesque.
Yeah. What was the word you learned today?
Oh, pingwid.
Pingwid. Fat and oily and greasy.
And oil. Is there any better word for him than porcine or pingwid? Anyway.
So you alluded a minute ago to the repercussions that have befallen Harvey Weinstein and the Weinstein Company as a result of his actions. Number one, first and foremost, he's been fired.
Yep.
He's been kicked off the board of directors he was co-chairman of the board of directors of the Weinstein Company. He's been fired from that position.
Yep.
He's been fired as the president of the Weinstein Companies. And
Gloria Allred has come out and asked him to waive the statute of limitations on some of these allegations. I mean, his world is toppling in on itself.
So that he can be sued for the he's never going to waive.
It would destroy the whole benefit of the settlements that he struck with these women.
And then the other thing that's happened is, a very big film finance company has now called in a $45 million loan that it made to the finance document that it made to instrument that it made to the Weinstein Company. Basically, they give an established company like the Weinstein Company, here's $45 million. You guys can go and use this to make movies, and you'll then pay us back on whatever schedule we have. They've said, well, the contract itself, pursuant to which we made you the loan, has what's called a material adverse change clause to it, which means that if there's any material adverse change to the company, typically it involves the company going belly up,
or a key person leaving,
and they're now calling in that loan against the Weinstein Company, and presumably they won't have too much difficulty coming up with $45 million, but maybe not. It's going to be hard to replace those dollars now that the company's in such disarray.
That's right, and this is really indicative of the box that the Weinstein Company is in, because remember, Bob Weinstein and Harvey Weinstein are the two sort of figureheads, and Bob Weinstein's always been known as a guy who is the finance guy. He makes movies that make money, but the types of movies that the company is known for are the Harvey Weinstein movies. Those are the Oscar winners, exactly.
Yeah, and so English Patient, The Crash, these sort of deep thinking, higher concept movies.
The higher concept movies. So his departure already having financial consequences for the company. Right. Not to mention, when he leaves, it's disentangling a founder from a company is going to be extraordinarily complex, because he's got back end on all the productions that are currently in progress, and they can't just cut him out of that. He's going to have to get a buyout or some sort of parachute or payout over time.
He owns, it's a privately held company, which means all the shares are owned by people who are direct buyers from the company itself. They're not public shareholders, and he's entitled to take that money with him and possibly to force the sale of a lot of that. So they would have to buy him out, especially if they want to disentangle themselves entirely. To your point, he owns a lot of back end in the movies, and there's no clause in any contract which forces him to take zero or less than the fair market value of those assets with him. So he is going to get an 8 or 9 figure payout on these dollars, and he's already a man who's got to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So he's going to be very, very wealthy. He's going to walk away from this a very rich man. He is a disgraced man, and reports have come out. This is Wednesday afternoon. Reports have come out Wednesday afternoon that he has been suicidal, or at least his daughter thinks so. So in that respect, it's had a tremendous impact on him. But in terms of wealth, it's his. The Weinstein Companies may be in trouble. He's also, now his wife, I guess, has left him as well.
Yeah. Where do you think this leaves the Weinstein Company itself? Because for years, these allegations go back to the 90s. And the company, there's some indication in the Ronan Farrow report that certain executives were fully aware of his conduct and basically turned a blind eye to it while they were reaping the profits of having Harvey Weinstein on board.
It's interesting. We don't know where the statute of limitations stand, because we don't know exactly when the allegations would be, when the allegations relate to, what time period. Some of them may be within the statute of limitations, which is probably on sexual harassment. On sexual harassment, it's probably not very long. On direct acts of sexual misconduct, rape, and those kinds of things. Considerably longer, but it's hard to believe that those would default back to the company itself. Mm-hmm. When you this whole thing, are you acting within the scope of your employment? When you sexually harass somebody, you are. When you take them up to your hotel room and actually force yourself on them in a physical way, maybe doesn't reflect back on the company. Anyway, we're getting a little far afield. Yep. I think the company's in a bad way. I think they're going to have to rebrand themselves, go the Kentucky Fried Chicken down to KFC kind of thing. We did a story today that Jay-Z was thinking about buying out Harvey Weinstein's share in the company. I assure you that Jay-Z is not going to be chairman of the board of the Weinstein Company.
Yeah,
it would be called
unlikely.
Something very different.
Unlikely.
Very different.
Weinstein.
Yeah, I think that anybody who comes in is going to demand a name change for this company at the very least, and a completely reconfiguration.
Poor Bob,
Poor Bob.
Bob's a Weinstein too, and he has not. I haven't heard any of these allegations about Bob.
Poor Bob, unless he knew what his brother was up to and said, "Oh, Harvey out there raping again."
Yeah, then less poor Bob.
Less poor Bob. One of the other things that the big narratives that has come out since the allegations were levied is this idea of hypocrisy in Hollywood. And, it's a different day, a different age, right? The allegations against Harvey Weinstein are disgusting and awful, but they're no more disgusting and awful than the allegations against Roman Polanski, for example, who back in the 1970s has admitted to having anal sex with a 13-year-old girl. 13? She was 13-year-old girl. We sort of, and he is nevertheless lauded in Hollywood. Harvey Weinstein, among others, has called for the United States government to drop the allegations of his conduct against him, for a full release and allow him to bring a pardon and bring him back into the country to keep making movies. And Harvey Weinstein's not alone. People on both ends of the political spectrum have argued for that. Woody Allen, of course, has accusations of all sorts of awful things, child molestation. He obviously is married to the girl who was once his stepdaughter.
And no mistake here that Ronan Farrow is quite sensitive to the Woody Allen type of allegations. That's why he writes articles like that. He's very sensitive about that.
So you have that hypocrisy, but you also have the hypocrisy that has come forward. What could be people accused of hypocrisy of two giant stars in the form of Brad Pitt and Ben Affleck. Talk about the Brad Pitt situation.
Yeah, so Brad Pitt, back in the day when Gwyneth Paltrow was up and coming, she was dating Brad Pitt, and she was cast in this movie Emma. Emma was a story that an old Jane Austen novel that eventually was turned into Clueless later. But when she was cast in Emma, she was already in the movie, and she met with Harvey Weinstein, I believe, at a hotel. And he made some flirtatious overtures toward her, touched her leg, invited her up to his hotel room. She rebuffed him. She then told her boyfriend, Brad Pitt, that this weird thing happened with Uncle Harvey, I think she called him. She looked at him as a family figure. She's, of course, the daughter of Blythe Danner and Bruce Paltrow, so she was sort of Hollywood royalty herself. She tells Brad Pitt, who then, in 1998, confronts Harvey Weinstein. And remember...
On behalf of his girlfriend.
On behalf of his girlfriend. Remember, at the time, Harvey Weinstein was already gigantic. He was a titan of Hollywood. Brad Pitt was an up-and-comer, not yet the Brad Pitt that we know and love, who's a sort of huge superstar. And he poked him in the chest, apparently, and said, if you ever lay a hand on Gwyneth again, you'll have to go through me. Some sort of tough guy.
So pretty cool stuff that Brad Pitt does in 1998. Fast forward a few years later, Brad Pitt is now arguably the biggest movie star in the entire world. He can pick and choose whatever role he wants. One of the roles he picks is Inglourious Basterds, executive producer Harvey Weinstein.
That's right.
So Brad Pitt is personally aware of Harvey Weinstein's conduct, unlike others who may be sort of second and third hand aware. He is, well, I guess that's secondhand, but heard directly from his girlfriend, confronted the man. But now he's willing to do a movie that Harvey Weinstein's the EP on.
That's right. That's exactly right. So exposes a little bit of the hypocrisy. For her part, Gwyneth Paltrow later starred in perhaps Harvey Weinstein's biggest movie, Shakespeare in Love, which he won the Oscar for.
She won the Oscar for. A huge part of her career in launching her. So he wasn't ostracized for this conduct. It was known for a very long time. These people had particular, encountered it in a very personal way, and yet he still continued to work in Hollywood. And I'm not sure how people really see that. I mean, that's certainly on Brad's part seemingly a little bit hypocritical, maybe an enabler of some sort. Maybe an enabler. It's a little different with Gwyneth Paltrow, given that when she got the role of Shakespeare in Love, although she was from Hollywood royalty, she had not broken onto the scene. This was her first real big leading lady role for which she got Oscar consideration. And it's hard to judge a woman who's been victimized by a man for then taking a role from that very same man when that role means elevating your entire career, elevating your life to a different stratosphere. Different situation than Brad Pitt, who was already in that stratosphere when he chose to do Weinstein movies. So I think you can judge them with through different lenses. The other star on whom a light has now been cast is Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck initially came out harshly criticizing Harvey Weinstein when these allegations were first made, but now sort of he's been forced to look into the mirror and some really harsh criticism has come his way.
That's exactly right. So Ben Affleck came out very powerfully and then has been raked over the coals for two incidents that have come out. There's two separate videos. The first one is from Total Request Live way back in I believe it was the late 90s or maybe early 2000s with a host called Hillary Burton, where Ben Affleck is interacting with her, comes around to her side, puts his arm around her, and touches her breast.
Grabs her breast. It was not like an innocent graze. He knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing, and he groped her.
That's right. She called it a tweak. She said, some girls may be into tweaking their breasts, but I prefer a high five. So at the time, she was playful on camera, but immediately afterwards or shortly thereafter then said this was inappropriate conduct. And he quickly after that video came out, apologized to her. Right. Then a subsequent video came out with a woman named Anne-Marie Losique. This was around the time when he was doing Jersey Girl and Geely while he was dating Jennifer Lopez. He was on a press junket, and there's an extended video where this woman is sitting on his lap, and he's making various comments about her breasts and her rack and flirting with her and holding her tightly.
And she is playing along and seems to be okay with it, but at the same time, the power dynamic is certainly there. He is a megastar at this point, and she's an unknown journalist. And you almost sense it, whether it was there or not on video, you almost sense the fact she may have been really uncomfortable with this kind of conduct, but she nevertheless had to put up with it. Same sort of power dynamic we were talking about earlier with
That's
Harvey
exactly
Weinstein.
right. He's a gigantic star at this point. Yeah. She's sort of squirming and smiling, but it does look uncomfortable. She has since come out, though.
Yeah.
And context is everything.
Yeah, and said, well, maybe it wasn't that. I don't think it was that big of a deal. I didn't mind being touched. He was a huge star.
She said he was quite respectful, as a matter of fact. She used the word respectful, and if you watch this video, it looks like anything but respectful, but those are her words. She said she was not a victim.
But this is in the wake of, in the immediate aftermath, again, of the revelations about Harvey Weinstein. Ben Affleck came out and said, I never knew about this. It's awful what Harvey has done. Rose McGowan, who has been harshly critical of Harvey Weinstein for a long time and is part of the New York Times article that started this whole thing, came out and said, Ben Affleck, you're a hypocrite because you, in fact, did know about this. I personally told you about these allegations that I have against Harvey Weinstein. At the time that they occurred, you knew about this, and don't you say that you had no idea, because you sure as hell knew.
She quoted him. She said, you said at the time, and I think he said, I told Harvey to stop doing that. Something very specific to these allegations. So it is stuck with Rose McGowan for a long time, and Ben coming under some serious heat.
I don't know why Ben Affleck felt the need to get out on this issue. I don't think anybody was looking for him as sort of the shining beacon that can lead us forward on the issue of gender in Hollywood.
Yeah, but both Ben Affleck and Matt Damon have come out on these issues because I think they've worked with Harvey Weinstein quite a bit in the past, and they felt
Good Will
compelled.
Hunting. Their initial breakthrough movie was a Weinstein production.
That's
so
right.
they felt I guess they had a need to go out and say, hey, we didn't know all this time.
Yeah, so far I would say Matt Damon came out a little bit better.
So I guess to sum it all up, Harvey Weinstein has gotten his. It certainly doesn't, make up for the losses that these women have suffered. A lot of people understand it's not just in the physical approaches and having to do maybe disgusting things with a disgusting guy, but also having their sort of career ride on whether or not they would capitulate to his advances. He's now getting his. He's lost his company. Sure, he's a rich man, but he's lost his livelihood. He's lost his wife. He's lost any respect that he once had in Hollywood. He's lost the favor of kings and presidents, which he had forever since he's been big in this town. And, he's paying a worthy price for a lot of unworthy sins. What's that sound?
It's mail time. Remember to write in your questions and comments to behindthebar@tmz.com. First one up is from Jim. Hey guys, you guys talked about the NFL protests recently, and I saw a tweet I wanted to run by you. Adam McKay said, and I quote, "Hope Cowboys players know that if they take a knee and Jones benches them, they will win in court because that's not remotely constitutional. I know you guys have issue with this, and I wanted to know your thoughts."
It's hard to see how the Constitution comes into play here, right, Derek? We have a private company that is allowed to restrict speech in any way. Anybody who's listening who works for a private company, not a public institution, but a private company, they can be told you may not speak about certain issues in public, and if you do, you can be fired.
I think that's right, although there's an interesting overlay here because Jerry Jones' conduct is circumscribed, at least in part, by the collective bargaining agreement.
Yes.
What he's allowed to do as an owner is limited by what he agrees to with the players in this collective bargaining agreement, and if there is sort of language in there on a contractual basis, not a constitutional type argument, you could maybe sue him and say he's violating the CBA, but that's separate from a constitutional
it's
violation.
Separate from a constitutional. I 100% agree that he is Jerry Jones by virtue of the collective bargaining agreement, which is what, the players are all union members, and every union, whether in sports or otherwise, is governed, their relationship with the companies is governed by a collective bargaining agreement. Basically, the union representatives and the company's representatives get together, they negotiate for certain rights. Nowhere in that document does it restrict a player's right to kneel for the national anthem. It does in the NBA collective bargaining agreement. There are specific requirements that you go out in the court and you stand for the
because this issue came up in the past. And
because
the
issue
NBA
came
hadn't
up,
in
so
the
the
NFL.
NBA addressed it. The NFL has not. Therefore, yes, if Jerry Jones tries to dock anybody pay or not let them play by virtue of kneeling, he will get sued, and I think he'll lose.
Yep.
All right, next up is from Meg. I'm from the UK and was wondering if there are any major differences in entertainment laws between the US and the UK, seeing as we don't seem to have the same type of paparazzi culture as you do. I love the podcast and look forward to hearing it every week.
Well, the UK's paparazzi culture is pretty well developed. I mean, we don't have to bring up Princess Diana, I think, to point that out was in stark relief. But no, yes, there are big differences. I think that there are two that I want to talk about. Number one, the concept of privacy is much the protections for invasions of privacy or against invasions of privacy are much more robust in the United Kingdom than they are in the United States. So in the United Kingdom, coverage. I remember there's a case that came out involving Naomi Campbell, I believe, where she was out shopping and the paparazzi followed her and published the photos. And a court in the United Kingdom said, well, she was engaged in private activity that should not have been covered by the paparazzi. It's also true involving children of stars that you're not really supposed to cover them with cameras and show their faces in magazines and on TV. Here in the United States, those things don't exist. If you are in public, regardless, and your children are in public, the press has a First Amendment right to record that and to publish it. If the people have an interest in it, it is public news, it's newsworthy, and it's in the public interest.
Yeah, and the other thing about American law is once something is in the public interest and it becomes a news story in America, it lives on the internet forever.
Yes.
Europeans have somewhat of a different approach. I know in Germany there's a big push to purge things from Google searches after a period of time, once it's no longer newsworthy, so that people don't have to live with the consequences of their actions for the rest of their life.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I prefer the U.S. system. I just think you're talking about the people's right to know, and I think I don't like the idea that government can ever get in the way of people's right to know something that is truly done out in public. If you go shopping at Louis Vuitton, you know what? You're a giant star, and you've chosen that life, and that's the way it goes, and you get covered, and you may not like it, but you know what? You got to deal with it. People have a right to know. I have some sympathy, but, it goes to a point.
All right, and that is it for Mail Time.
Thanks very much. We will talk to you again next week with another exciting edition of Behind the Bar. See ya.
Great.
Thanks for watching. If you want more nerdy deep dives into the legal side of celebrity news, hit our subscribe button right here.
And check out our previous episodes over here.